You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Has he come out?
Ireland have done it.
Ireland have beaten South Africa 13-8 in pool play at the Rugby World Cup at Stade de France this morning. It means they are highly likely to top Pool B. And should the All Blacks progress out of Pool A, then it would be the All Blacks against Ireland in the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals. Winger Mac Hansen scoring in the 33rd minute to give the Irish a 7-3 lead at half-time.
Johnny Sexton. No, there it is. Perilously close. Comes again, low, and Hansen will walk it in. Wow.
Springboks winger Cheslin Colby hit back in the second half, but penalties to Johnny Sexton and Jack Crowley saw Ireland hold on for a 13-8 win. Our rugby editor and All Blacks match commentator Elliott Smith watched on in France. How do you sum up that contest, Elliott?
Oh, Piney, it was absorbing. It felt like the 80 minutes flew by in about half an hour, and I think what we saw there were two teams right on top of their game, knowing the way they wanted to play. The intensity was unlike anything I've seen at this Rugby World Cup to date. We saw a really absorbing contest between two quality teams, and there wasn't much in it, in all honesty. In the end, it was a firecracker of a match that is, I think, lit the fuse right under this Rugby World Cup.
What do you think gave Ireland the edge?
Well, I think they owned the big moments just a slight bit better than South Africa. They took their chance with the first half try. They put a lot of pressure on, I think, coming out of half-time as well, with the game being in the balance, and just owned those little moments better when they needed to get a penalty or a little win at in terms of a penalty or the breakdown or whatever it was. They were able to find one at the right moment in time, and I think those are really, really fine margins. That there wasn't much in it between these two teams, but they just controlled those big moments just a little bit better. Got a late penalty that put them out to 5 points and played from in front, which is pretty vital in contests like this. When you have the lead, the onus is obviously on the side behind to try and find a way. Kickers like Marnie Libok and Faf de Klerk weren't able to strike those kicks. Pressure does funny things to people. I think Ireland bossed those big moments a little bit better than South Africa did.
So in all likelihood now, this will feed Ireland into a quarterfinal against the All Blacks. That is, of course, provided the All Blacks get out of their pool in second place, Ireland will probably finish top in Pool B. How will the All Blacks be feeling about a game against Ireland in the quarterfinals?
I think there'll be a sense of trepidation from the All Blacks, but I think whoever won tonight, there will be a sense of trepidation from it. As I said, there were fine margins in that game in South Africa with a couple of successful penalty goals, could have had their noses in front and could have won the contest by a point or a couple of points or whatever it might have been. What we saw tonight, I thought, were two teams playing some really, really exceptional rugby, and on the basis of what we saw tonight, it's going to take a lot for the All Blacks to hang with either team should they meet them in this Rugby World Cup. Assuming it is Ireland they face next, Ireland have obviously got the wood on the All Blacks in recent times. The two tests they won on home soil last year to win the first test series in New Zealand. They know the way they play. All the players, the key players, were in similar positions last year against the All Blacks. So they know their way to beating this All Blacks team. The All Blacks, though, have made those changes to the coaching staff since. If they're back to full strength, they have the 4 or 5 injured players that are still sitting on the sidelines back in. They'll fancy their chances of rising to the occasion and beating Ireland. But Ireland, as I said, very confident in their own game, know their way around and know how to win the arm wrestle against teams like the All Blacks and put the squeeze on. As I said, hard to see on the basis of what we've seen in recent times anyway, the All Blacks hanging with an Irish side for 80 minutes.
You picked Ireland pre-tournament as your pick to win the whole thing. I get the feeling more and more are jumping on that bandwagon with you now. Do you think Ireland are World Cup favourites now?
I think they have to be pretty close when you take into account the Dupont injury, and we're still awaiting a firm, real timeline on that. Ireland having never won a Rugby World Cup quarter-final and never getting into semi-final week and beyond. There'll be all sorts of questions there. the world number one ranking, won 6 Nations titles with Andy Farrell and previously Joe Schmidt in that series we mentioned just before against the All Blacks last year. That doesn't seem to faze Ireland. There'll be all sorts of questions in that week leading up to the World Cup, but on the basis of what we've seen, they view history as something to walk towards rather than something to be fearful of, and I think that'll hold them in pretty good stead if they face the All Blacks in quarter-final week.
And just a word on South Africa, let's not forget they lost a game at the last World Cup as well and then went on to win the whole thing. We shouldn't count them out, should we?
No, we shouldn't, and what they might have given for having a goal kick tonight in perhaps the form of Andre Pollard, either on the bench or starting. He's a superb player. They missed 3 shots at goal in the second spell through Marnie Libok and Faf de Klerk. Those are key moments in games. Andre Pollard is a very, very good goal kicker. You'd probably think he would have got one of those and put some more pressure on the Irish, and maybe the scoreboard seesaws a little bit more. I think Pollard, now he's back in the mix, will have a pivotal role to play for the Springboks as they march on towards the quarterfinals and potentially that meeting against France. I don't think they'll necessarily fear the French, especially if Antoine Dupont is sidelined for that match. So I think Pollard coming in is a real boost for South Africa. Wouldn't count them out of winning this World Cup on the basis of what we've seen tonight either.
Intriguing times. Thanks, Elliott. Thanks for staying up late for us. Elliott Smith out of France, where this morning we've seen Ireland beat South Africa 13-8 and put themselves in pole position to win Group B. So that would mean it's Ireland, in all likelihood, in the quarterfinals for the All Blacks. Now, a couple of people have pointed out to me that, yes, of course, the All Blacks still have to get out of their pool. But I'll have the argument with you that they're going to beat Italy and Uruguay. I know you might have a contrary view, and I'm happy to debate that with you, but for me, the All Blacks will beat Italy next week and Uruguay the week after and finish second in Pool A. Ireland will, after their 3 wins, I think negotiate their way past Scotland okay and finish top of Pool B. So to me, it feels as though we can speak in reasonably realistic terms about an All Blacks Ireland quarter-final.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.